To say that the next guest on What's Up with Vasant is a man of many talents would be an underestimation of huge proportions. In a few moments from now, you shall meet with Dr. Ajay Prabhakar, whose resume boasts of such diverse honors, credits, expertise traversing multiple aspects of life that it's just going to blow your mind. What I have gathered so far is that he's an archaeologist, community developer, an executive policy expert, an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker, and an author with more than 6 books to his credit. In academia, Dr. Prabhakar is a PhD doctorate degree holder from the renowned North Carolina State University. If you thought that was much, he's also an archaeologist and has collaborated on research projects in the fields of linguistics and archaeology, especially around monolith writings in Ireland. Furthermore, he has served as a United Nations Country Program Officer and has done a significant amount of community development work in Africa, especially in Nigeria, where he even worked directly with the former President of Nigeria, Mr. Olusegun Obasanjo, and has been credited with a lot of good work that he has done on the Education for All project. If you don't find that amazing enough, I don't know what else will. He runs his own IT business services where he has developed AI and machine learning education platforms. I'm not even kidding when I say this is in addition to all the other work that he does as a thought leader and a speaker, where he travels the world and presents at various prestigious academic, government and private organizations. It has been an absolute pleasure having Dr. Prabhakar on my channel, and I wish to have a series of more podcasts with him, with this one being on the state of Indian education. With that, I hope you enjoy this podcast. Now sit back, grab a drink, and as always, I hope you enjoy this podcast. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to What's Up with Vasant. We have yet another special guest here on the channel today, none other than the multi-talented Dr. Ajay Prabhakar. So it's such a pleasure to have you on the channel. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you, Vasant, for having me on this channel and on this wonderful show.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. So can you give us a lay of the land? Where does India's education lie today from a primary, secondary to a basic college level education?
The story, again, I love numbers, and I'll start with numbers again. So India has a total of 15 lakh schools. So that's almost like 15%, and only 15% actually are in the urban areas.
Okay.
So we get 85% of all schools, and this is the primary bed of education, wherein education of India, if you could put it like that, or children are trained in India. So that will tell you a huge story. I want to add some more numbers there. So 71%, if I'm not wrong, like 71% of all the enrollments which happen in the country, again, are in, rural areas.
Okay.
That's another number I want us to, really meditate on, if I could use that.
Sure.
Then there's another number which I want to talk about, and that number is about the number of teachers. So let's say if you're talking about teachers, we have 75% of all the teachers in India, again, are in rural areas. When I say rural, not urban.
Sure. Everything else, everything that's not a big city is basically
Absolutely.
what you're talking about. Okay.
Absolutely. And one more, and the most important number, I would say, 70% of all the students that we have are in government schools.
Okay.
70% of all students in India are in government schools. Now, mind-boggling numbers.
For sure.
What these numbers and tell you stories. The story that these numbers point at is that India still lives in her villages. India still lives in her rural areas. So if we have to fix something, that is the area that we have to start with. We cannot isolate the fact that a road leading to the government school is not developed. What I'm trying to say is not to take education in isolation or in silos. The most important thing is to take it holistically. So it means that toilets are there in place.
Infrastructure needs to be built around it.
Absolutely. So infrastructure, whether it's roads, because generally what is seen is that we focus so much on education, and we are so interested and so haggled by having the school in place, that we forget that there is no
accessibility is also
road is not there, or toilets are not there, or benches are not there, or blackboards are not there, or internet is still a bit far away, electricity is not there. So this is still a story. I am saying we made great stride, big, huge, mammoth strides, and I'll be talking in particular and in particular about what's happening in India. So from the last 20 years, we have seen amazing, big, huge strides. Why I say this is because our country is very huge. I mean, it's big, whatever dimensions, the number of people, the area. So to have policies affecting at so many spots, it takes time, But the last 20 years, we've made very good strides. We've really improved on many statistics, but we need to do a lot, much of work.
Go ahead.
Yes, that's right.
Sorry to disturb the flow. Okay.
No. So that's fine. So, the whole idea is that when we start, or when we do anything as far as the education system or trying to improve the education system is concerned, one is having a very holistic approach, interministerial work. A lot of interministerial or inter-domain work has to be done. In the sense like the roads or works ministry cannot say, I don't want to work with the education ministry. It has to be a team effort. It's time that we have convergence, of efforts. Otherwise, we'll be doing 100 in one and 10 in another. It doesn't add up. It's still 110 of 200,
What states in particular, do you think are lagging far behind versus those that are coming along decently and the ones that are, of course, right at the forefront, which I would imagine would be a Mumbai or a Delhi?
I would say some of the states which are doing extremely good. Of course, Kerala tops the rankings as far as education is concerned, followed by Delhi, Maharashtra, and I think Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
These are the better performing states. We have in the not so good performing states, we have Bihar, which is the lowest, in fact, as per this is not according to me.
Yeah.
This is research studies which have been carried out, surveys which have been carried out. So I should say that categorically that it is not me who decides that. It is a general studies which are there. It is also on the number of schools, the quality of schools. So that's how these rankings have been ranked at. So looking at it again, Arunachal Pradesh is another one, Rajasthan, Jharkhand. These are all the states which are in the lower rung of or improving states, I would say. They catch up, but a lot more effort needs to be put in. At this point of time, I like to add that the literacy rate in India is 74%.
Okay. And when you say literacy, I think it's important also to define what literacy is. What is literacy?
Yes. So the basic reading, at least writing, and the basic computer. We are talking about real basics. At least, the reading, writing, the RWM, as we call it. That is the basic that we are really looking at here. So,
sorry to interrupt, but sure. My definition of literacy, especially in India, uniquely, is the ability to sign a document as opposed to even reading. Maybe I'm mistaken, but could people, a lot of the times, these people in power or in government, do they categorize people's ability to even sign a document as literacy, or do you think their understanding is the same as yours, where it's a very poking question that you just asked now, because according to my standards or my rating, or if I were to really, and this is personal, if I were to really really grade a person literate or illiterate or not literate, I would say it would be the basic, at least basic reading, writing, and comprehension, which is very important. The comprehension, see, one aspect is the reading aspect. One, you can string, you can get letters together and, read it. But how much of it
we
Very
have
grasping.
yeah. So, and how much of it is like computing when we talk about, or the mathematics part when we talk about, how much of it really makes sense to you? It is just not identifying the numbers. There are standards which we need to really append now. I mean, those eras wherein like we used to calculate. So this what I'm trying to draw at is the arrival of all these numbers. How we arrive at such
Correct.
numbers skewed.
Yeah.
Skewed is not, it's not fair,
Yeah.
because these are some of the things which we need to really work on. It is not enough that today, in today's world, a person knows how to identify letters or just sign his or her name or just count 1, 2, 3 till 10 or 100. That era is long gone, really. So we need like really, what are you doing about digital skills? Today, everything, we talk about digital India, but how many of our even our elders, or even people who are elder in villages, how many of them know how to do things? What is the guarantee that the before, like people who are not able to read, now they can't do anything, in fact. Even if they know how to sign, where are they signing really? Is it not on tablets or computers or like, how does it change anything really? So
but it's also, sorry, but it's also a matter of, it's such a irony that Digital India has percolated to the most remotest of places in India, right? It has reached the lengths and breadths of the country. So you'll find a fisherwoman somewhere in coastal India, using a cell phone digitally to make transactions, or someone who's at a Panwadi somewhere in UP using that to make PayPal, transactions. But that is different from education, right? And so I want to come back to our core sort of question is, what is the current level? How do we deduce the current level of skill set being provided to our children in education, not in the urban cities, but in the rest of the country, as you said, right? So how do we gauge that, and how is it being determined at this time?
Yes, so one of the primary parameters, I would say, of any, again, we start with the primary school enrollment numbers. So if you are looking at even Asia, not even like Europe, Canada, US, or any place like that, if you're looking at even enrollment levels in India, now it's really sad that 6 to 14 years of age, even today, we have 70 million children, like more than 70 million actually, are either school dropouts, which is even not comparable to even Sri Lanka or any of the other like even Bangladesh for that matter.
Yeah, Bangladesh has made some good strides in the last 5-10 years.
Absolutely. So these are numbers which we need to really work on. So important, very important. So we talked about the digital aspect of it, wherein like we are saying, I would vote for more and more people. Gets us to the schools, like which are the center of where all this happens. In all our strides that we are making as a nation, we are also now consolidating schools.
Right.
What consolidation means is merging of schools or writing off on schools which do not make economic sense. My question is also, how good is that? Now, if a village has 50 people and 10 of them are like children, or does that mean that we write off that school or, wind up that school so that, those 50, don't
get access. Yeah. But isn't that done by the central government to ensure that everyone gets at least a school? Whether or not it has great facilities or even decent facilities is another question. Accessibility wise, is it not that 100% of India has been touched as yet, or 90%, or maybe am I delusional? I don't know.
I think like we have been able to, as I said, like great strides have been made. The current government is also doing much, like in all these areas. But and that is where again, when we talk about NEP, that is the National Education Policy. So when I think we need almost, what is the number that we are really looking at? 50 new schools and one university every week. So according to every week, we need to have 50 new schools and one university set up. And that is when we will be able to reach out to people, which is like, in which world?
Yeah.
In which? So what I'm even trying to say is, what are we really doing about other structures? Okay, I get the point that it is educationally not viable, but we cannot, I mean, economically not viable, like schools, like, having a single school like miles away, but I mean, if we can't be looking at it like a business establishment.
So when you say consolidation, sorry, do you mean that there is a primary, there's a kindergarten, there's a primary, there's a secondary, there's a college, all at one place, so that everyone can come and use the facilities, and that's why it becomes economically viable for the investor?
No, these are all, now, I would say this is from the government. Yeah, government schools, as I said, now private schools. There are two things here. One is the private schools are not reaching out as much. Though private schools are coming up, but these are all urban.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Schools. I mean, it makes economic sense to them, like to have a school in an urban area. But there have been schools which have been situated in rural areas, but not really like where, it would make no sense to the investor. In such areas, that is where like public hospitals or public, whether we talk about public schools, makes sense, because this is one area wherein like the government needs to support. So if it's a village which is like really hard to access, you have to cross waterways to reach there, or cross a mountain to reach to that place. In such places wherein like there is no benches, I mean, children are sitting on the floor, blackboards are broken, single teacher in the whole of the school. I mean, teacher is like, if it is water to be carried to the, any place, or, getting the children an order or ringing the bell, it's just the same teacher who's doing the whole, I mean, the entire school is one teacher, So those kind of, so if you're talking about that, we need to support such schools more. So now what is happening is that, first of all, so where I'm trying to drive at is, number one, we need to strengthen our schools.
Infrastructure and
our public schools, that is government schools, we need to like really strengthen them. Number one, we need to get, so it means the infrastructure, or if you would say the internal structure, that is the content, the pedagogy, like different aspects, the teachers, the training, the things, the processes, So we need to, if it means that we have like multiple, if it doesn't make economic sense, we should look at models where, and this is what I propose, wherein like we have post offices, we have hospitals, we have a school, all in one, a bank maybe, all in one, campus or one area, wherein like it is the same structure is being used for multiple reasons. So even if you're working in the infrastructure, one spend is equal to like, it is affecting so many things. So morning it is a school, afternoon it turns out to be a mail, thing, night it turns out to be, or evenings it turns out to be, another service providing a bank.
Very interesting, yeah.
So this is something which I feel should, or it is absolutely supposed to work, Otherwise, we keep spending on a post office, which is, the utility is just like 22%. And a post office is there in most of the places again. A hospital, which is again used definitely, but the structure is again, you have to maintain the structure. The majority of the cost is, number one, the maintenance of the structure. Number two, the salaries which go out to personnel. So again, when we are talking about all these costs, this can be consolidated. The structure can be one structure wherein like, has multiple, and you can even have similar to the Aadhaar card could be used as a key. So when a person or a family comes in, they can access health, they can access education, they can access their finances, they can access everything that is critical, even have a farmer's market for that matter.
Sure.
So every one place. So this is something which, because what the government currently is doing is rolling out 150,000 schools to cut down 25,000 in Bihar alone, if I'm not wrong. So, I mean, those are big numbers. It's not 100, it's not 10, it's not 100, it's thousands of schools. Imagine even if it is like 100 students or, even 50 students in such schools, if those are big numbers and when we talk about workforce, when we talk about leadership in the strata of nations, this is what will give every citizen. Our nation is a cumulative number of so many individuals. Their skills, their strengths is what will make us number one and not anything else. So we need to really start working on the villages, the village schools, We need to really work on their skills, We need to really build up them so that and have this it could also be a community center. When I talk to you, in fact, I'm even getting more ideas, like a community center which can support agriculture, which is going to be, which has to be supported, a resource like an internet based, wherein when seeds have to be sown. This is something which I worked on some years before, in fact. When seeds can be sown, when is the best harvest time? What are the best seeds which will work? What are the best crop which will work? What are the different cycles? Farmers today, it's hard because information is so hard to find, and the new generation is also disconnected from the older the knowledge base that is there. So many different issues. So yes, coming back again.
I wanted to just come back to the point about disparity in quality of education, right? So if you talk about a village that's in remote northeast India or some remote village in Rajasthan versus even if it's a small town in, say, Kerala or Maharashtra, there's already so much disparity between the two. There's a spectrum. I'm not even talking about, schools for the elite. I'm not talking about sophisticated schools with better architecture and infrastructure. I'm talking about just this disparity. And we are then needing these schools to compete with the international schools being set up in Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or Calcutta, what have you, because those schools are competing or trying to get to the level of what Americas and the Canadas and the Europes are providing already, which they've been providing for the last 50 years in their basic school education level is where we're getting at now with our international schools. International schools are almost reaching that point where basic levels of education had already been achieved in the Western world 30, 40 years back, where they had very, very calibrated metrics of how to gauge someone's intellect and how to harness someone's intellect to find what suits them and leverage those facilities to make them the best product of what they could have become. We don't have that as yet, obviously. And so in the world of this chat GPT and AI, and we're dropping all these words these days, how do we bridge that gap? I mean, it's such an enormous gap. We may say that we could thump our chests and we could say that we're doing better than some of our neighboring nations, but they were never the benchmark in any case, right? Our benchmark should have been, say, the Chinese model or the Singaporean model, or closer to home. I would say it could have been that, or Dubai, maybe. I don't know what it is in Dubai, but
China is a great model, in fact, that you got out with the literacy for all model, which they took it very seriously, and they achieved it. I think it was in 1970, 75. They've already achieved that.
Wow.
So the same. I mean, we started together because we cannot compare, or we won't be able to. You would say, I mean, the metrics are not the same if you're comparing ourselves, whether it's colonial rule or any other.
In every aspect, it's a very, very diverse country than ours. In terms of there's more uniformity in everything there versus in our sort of country. Everything is diverse, everything is mixed, everything is
yes. No, I would say I'm talking more about like our comparison with the US or the UK or Canada or any other place. Now that is one thing which we cannot compare because they started earlier. You could
fair enough. Yeah,
you could give
that benefit of the doubt.
Benefit of doubt. But you cannot say with China that's not the case because they absolutely started. They started 2 years later than you or us, for that matter. So I mean, you cannot take that example and take it lightly.
On a lighter note, I find it amusing how whenever we speak to us Indians, right, among each other here or wherever back home, it's always like, you can't compare us to the Western world because it started 300 years ago. Then we say, okay, come closer to home. Can we compare ourselves with Singapore or China? Singapore is a very chota country. We say, can we compare ourselves to China? China is a communist country. So every country is going to have its challenges, right? They overcame those challenges so that they could reach where they have arrived
right
at. So
go on, please.
So yeah, that's all I wanted to say is that we have our own set of challenges which are very unique. I'm sure that they are more maybe in numbers, but we definitely can do better instead of always saying that लेकिन वो तो ऐसा है यार, वो तो communist था ना, वो तो ये था, Singapore तो छोटा nation है. It's amusing to me. छोटा nation था, but their level of poverty in Singapore when they got their freedom from the British was much, much worse, or they were more backward.
And they do have resources. What resources does Singapore even today? What are the resources that we can talk about which can be associated with Singapore? It's only people.
It's just resource. It's resource management. Yeah.
I mean, even to market or if you're talking about Singapore, even it's just changed the mindset of people in saying that it started marketing itself as a shipping hub, and that's how it built itself, And the only reason, and the reason why we see Singapore as so many decades ahead is also because the consistent effort that they have been doing, and they have been really focusing on their education. Not that it doesn't have flaws, but again, they have been consistently working on their educational system, and that is what we need to do here,
Right.
Then just having flashy headlines is saying that India is very close to Singapore in falana. So I mean, those apart, we need to really focus and we need to really work on our skill sets, if you could say that. Yes.
So China, you were talking about China. Sorry,
yes.
When I interrupted you.
No. So when we talk about China, so China is a classic example of what we can compare ourselves with. So we are now talking about, we talked about the disparity which is there. We also talking about the international schools which are getting a Singapore model into India, or similar models of the Western world into India. That apart, you could have this fantastic piece of curriculum or pedagogy, and you could get it, let's say, if, with all mercies, we could get it to every school in rural India. Would it work? Absolutely not. Because the last mile delivery is always done by a teacher. A teacher today who doesn't have infrastructure to connect to the internet. A teacher who's not trained, who's even averse, who's repellent to the idea. I've seen, and this is not a story. I've seen teachers. I would like to name, but there are teachers even in my organization who would shift away or push away keyboards and say, I don't want to work with computers. And this is Mumbai or Maharashtra. So there are teachers like that in urban areas wherein they don't want to. I don't want to touch technology. So how are you going to? So that's the same kind of angst or frustration that you're going to transfer to a child. Even the mindset, for that matter. What are the mindset that you are transferring to a child? And mind me again. We talk about being a superpower. Yeah, I'll circle back to that point again. When we don't have teachers to build, these are the people who will build the nation. Who are not trained for the same. Today, their knowledge base itself is so we are sticking ourselves to textbooks, which are not even moderated, which have too much fragmented data. So that's that. If you're looking at now, we have the biggest percentage of young people today. It will last for another 15 years. 2040, I think, 2045 is the max that we'll have that window.
The window, of opportunity.
This is the time we have to make it tick. What that means is that in India today, we need to focus on young people, really. We are talking about like 4 to 24. If this window is not focused, and work needs to start yesterday, not today, not tomorrow. So if we don't start focusing on this, and we talked about Singapore, this is their export. The human resource is their export. We have so much of this export available in this country. We talk about brain drain. I'm always fascinated by this word brain drain. But this is the same brains, or these are the same brains which have got so much for our country. In fact, we should be proud that in every country today we have Indians. And these are resource pools who are like getting, whether it's the scientific knowledge, whether it's the pulse. These people can be the ambassadors, for future, to fuel, future growth. So we should, and we must, we have to start work on this segment, this 4 to 14 of 24 years of age. We have to really focus, and work has to start, because the 45 or 50, let's give ourselves 2050, which is not like really far away, it's just 27 years more. How much of work can we achieve in 27 years? It's not much. It has to be an octopus kind of a approach, wherein a multi-pronged approach, wherein we attack on several different factors. Yes, at the same time. So whether it is infrastructure, whether it is teacher training, today teachers feel dejected, getting this fact again, we have some of the best teachers. We have some of the best. Now, the next statement is what, teachers will, really me again, we have some of the best pay for teachers here. Now, this is what, says Dr. Talk, So I would say today, with the policies that the government has, introduced, we have some of the best pays compared to any Asian country, whether it's China, whether it's Singapore, maybe not neck to neck, but very close. But problem is how, now flip it the other way, how do we make them accountable? There is one segment which are there in government schools, which are who are being paid, or, who are having that kind of a amount being paid as salaries. But there's also that, segment of teachers who are, paying pittance, so there's no ranking,
there is, everything is so unstructured, very skewed, absolutely, very vague, where there'll be some semblance of sense being made, then suddenly you'll enter this world of a mirage kind of a situation where you don't know what's going on, right? You turn up and you find that, oh, actually this isn't the case, because now that you study it, there's always some gap, there's always something that we were over marketing ourselves as having achieved. But then when you dig deeper, it's like, oh, but it's not really what we were looking for, kind of a situation.
So we have investors who can provide smart boards, but who will operate it? With which electricity would it power that smart board? And with yes.
Sorry. I was just going to ask you, Dr. Prabhakar, that from international training scenarios like Teach for India, the foundation, which I'm still looking to become a part of, so that we're able to sort of bring in our skill set of, working overseas, and our education levels of having got our education from overseas universities. You as well have done that. Yes. And then bringing that quality of education and skill set for free or for a dime to the masses as much as we can reach, making an impact like that. I feel that's another very big resource pool that we can tap upon. But again, that is not regulated. There isn't a big push being made. I don't see it coming through, at least living here in Canada. I don't see a very big push being made in India, asking for that kind of support from, the Indian diaspora living overseas. So I feel that's another massive resource pool that we can tap upon.
Yes. So now the flip side, now we talked about how there's need to be work needs to be done on the, public schools. But who's going to these schools? Even today, let's say if you take an urban scape, and it's tier 1, tier 2, even translating to tier 3 uh, uh, places, cities. We already have international schools, or we have schools which are franchise going into all of this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, cities or places. Uh, uh, what's happening is now there's a reverse trend which is happening, that children are now dropping out of government schools and getting into private schools. So there's another. So because of this, let's say we had 200 students in a government school, 150 go out, 50 remain. There's no sense in having a school there with a mammoth infrastructure. Some of the even the public schools, that isn't like the schools which are run by the government, which I visited. I mean, I found it to be nice, good, because the way they were maintained. But the problem is the soft infrastructure. We can't just, and I keep saying this, we can't just work on one aspect alone. We cannot just paint up, have beautiful things being donated, or whether it is put up in a school, but not have quality education in the school. So this gets us to the next milestone, which is the soft infrastructure. So, I mean, teachers are also part of it, like as the last mile delivery. So we have organizations, multiple of them, who are doing, even our own organizations are trying to do multiple things. But the problem is then, like quality teachers, also our attitudes towards teaching. I always say commercialization, whether it's, anything, it standardizes products. It takes away the quality of the product.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So when you come to and it should never be, in fact, these are some of the things which should never be commercialized, outsourced, given to, to the private sector. So this is education, healthcare are some of them, in fact. So education is number one there. So when I say, now there are many things which could be done. Yeah. So this is another part of the story wherein, like, people are pulling out of governments. There is no confidence. There is no confidence in a government school. When you say, like, this is a shocking and a very, very insinuating statement to me. But, the numbers will say the story. People are pulling out of government schools because maybe some places they have wonderful infrastructure, but there are no teachers to teach. The pedagogy, the curriculum is in tatters. That is where I would commend the Kendriya Vidyalayas. Kendriya Vidyalayas have done
I'm a product of KV. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have to talk to the preached, the converted, I would say. So preach to the converted. So this is one thing which is definitely there. So, so KVs are one place wherein, like, because it's more standardized. The curriculum is also uniform across the country. So whenever, like, you go from A to B to C, all remains, there is a stand. Now this is the exact model which we need to replicate in all the government schools, in fact.
But the gap, though, coming out of a government school is still felt to some extent. I would say, if you contrast it again to international levels of education, we're always going to be lagging behind on that. But are you saying that it's okay to do that instead of making an attempt to jump higher and get a Singapore model, which we cannot achieve because we don't have the pathways, or we don't have the basic infrastructure to facilitate that level of education? It's better to stick to what we have and try to improve upon that? Or are you saying?
No, that's again another interesting question. The question you asked was, like, we are having, like, a distant, Singapore, let's use the word Singapore model. And we are trying to attempt to reach to that, let's say, a defined model. Yeah. We're trying to reach to it. Now, before all that, there are certain things which have to be in place. Now, this is where, and I would say we should not stop, or we should not aim for a defined model, let's say a Singapore model. We should aim for something beyond, which should be ideal. Number one, which should be something which is very unique to us. When I say us, Indians, and which would tackle which would really cater to our challenges here. Now there are so many. So one, I started with early education. The early education structure, now before 6 years of age, 85% of synapses, the brain structure is all formed, all done, and then we start our education. So now the challenge is many of the experiences which a child could have experienced, touching a soft surface, doing things, not really like learning things, doing things are all lost. We don't leverage that part. We are not taking advantage of that part. So you might say, what is the big deal? Get away with it. 6 years, let them play. Yes, but they can play and learn. They anyway learn. They have to learn because as a human being, we learn so many ways. We learn about the world, we learn about our immediate environment. So why can't things be taught in a more defined manner, in a playful manner, and which can be standardized? Now, this is where I keep hammering this aspect of values. We are going away from patriotism. We are going away from integrity, teaching patriotism, having that feeling towards our country, not taking things for granted,
Absolutely.
seeing things, and these are things which need to be taught and it can be taught in multiple ways. Humility, being humble, So these are things which need to be taught. These are values these are the things which should be the string which holds anything that we teach children. So the values need to be the string which holds the education system in place. This is one very important thing, and it should start in the early education age. It starts 5, 3, whatever, whether it's preschool, nursery. So that needs to be structured. So it doesn't need to be a spiritual dimension. It could have, but it doesn't need to be. It could be functional values like saying the truth, being patriotic, not taking things for granted, respecting human beings, really very important. Not taking your friend for granted, like not taking anyone, working together. All these are very important things which need.
This is like the Japanese model, right? Like when we think about the Japanese, I've seen videos on YouTube of how these kids are not really taught education material. They're taught to do things as you would at home or in a public institution. They have to serve their own food. They have to clean their own toilets. It's just brilliant. When I saw those videos, I was so amazed. Yes. Little kids, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old.
Absolutely. They're taught to. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, go on, please.
No, that's it. That's all I was going to say. Yes. I had a few more examples, but go on, please. I want to hear from you.
Yes. So the thing is absolutely a beautiful example, in fact, and a beautiful model, in fact. Japanese, till 6 years of age, they don't talk about education.
Yeah.
They are like focused on that. And it's a fantastic model, in fact. Today, like if you would see a citizen of Japan, they would clean after everyone leaves. Even if it is not their job,
absolutely
clean up the area. We talk about Swachh Bharat, but this is the culture which needs to respecting a woman. You'll be shocked. In fact, this is not borrowed. I don't have to borrow from anyone. No research I have to borrow. In the schools that we are in and we operate, whether it's curriculum or whether our programs, a boy finds it so difficult to appreciate a girl, but the girl doesn't have the same problem towards a boy. I don't mean to say like you are cute, you are sweet. No, not that kind of appreciation. To say 3 good qualities about a girl.
Yeah.
Respecting that woman. Now, it starts from the school. It has to start from the school, where like you tend to like really appreciate or at least know that these are the good qualities, or what are good qualities, or what are the things which are important that I should work on, really. Tying your shoelaces, working small things like that, keeping your place clean. If there is spillage, like you clean it, make children responsible. Very funny incidents which I hear all across when schools call me up, or like I am talking to principals, or when I'm talking to teachers, is number one is like, what is money? I mean, if I have to buy something, is it not the ATM machine which I punch 4 letters or whatever and money comes out, you know? So not taking things for granted, really. Not taking teachers for granted. That's another thing which is happening. You know, when we talk about teacher, and that's a very, very important thing. When we talk about, if we don't value our teachers, whether it's the urban, we say Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, but in our culture, this is a very spiritual angle, but even culturally, I mean, we're taught how to respect, but how much of that respect is now still there in the generation which is coming in today? Like, there are incidents, and these are live examples, and these are things that I have heard of, from wherein like a student, if the teacher doesn't put on the AC, would say, I'll report you to the police station, you better put that on, you know. And these are children who are like third graders, fourth graders, you know. So it's shocking, you know. Parents, now this is also, these are all, when we talk about all these different, these are all stakeholders of education. Now, the principal, it's a community, you know, as they say, you know, it is a village which raises a child, you know. So when we talk about all these very important issues, wherein like parents shout, yell, and abuse teachers in front of students, you know. And this is happening. It's not fairy tale. It happens every day in one school or the other, you know. So examples are setting.
We don't have, aside from the academic piece itself, we're not concentrating on the value systems that we need to create. Because as we discussed about the Japanese model, where children are taught values, which is why they are patriotic, they have a sense of nation, they have a sense of contributing, right? And that's what they reflect in their culture as a brand. When you're Japanese, the world over, people always appreciate them for their levels of courtesy, dignity, cleanliness, manners. And you contrast that to people from around the world. And I'm not saying that the Western world's great at it. They themselves have set bad examples time and again. I used to be a flight attendant a long time back. So I've seen how people are culturally from across the nation, right? There's a fair representation of people on a flight going from one international destination to another. You keep interacting. So I do find the Japanese extremely inspiring for us and our model, which is similar in that, right? Because we had the Gurukul system once upon a time. We had the Brahmacharya, we had the Gurukul systems, which now if we talk about it, it is called saffronization, or, you know, they start saying that this is not secular talk. So I'm not going to, I think that the purpose of me saying this is not necessarily attributing it to one religion versus another. You can call it whatever you want to call it, adapt it, and take the best of all these different models. If you have something other than this that you think is better, use those models and create a value system based learning. Because I find that if I had to put it in a nutshell, my biggest problem with the way things are done in India is there is over intellectualization done by the policymakers at the top. They complicate every possible documentation, every form of instruction in such a complicated sense that you as a citizen growing up in the country also start losing confidence in yourself, your intellect, because just figuring out a basic document of a government procedure or a policy is so complicated.
One interesting thing that you talked about, and in fact the question started just there, is revolutionizing the entire way we look at education. There needs to be an evolution now. We for 60, 70 years have been following the same model of what the British left us with. The mass production of clerks, the mass production of scribes, the mass production of people who can help them with certain things, and everything was set to that model. We need to really go away from that model. We need some of it could be, you know, if it is really beneficial, could be taken up, but most of it or many of it should be really, you know, gone away with. So it could be like the ways like we like you talked about Japan. It's a very interesting thing, and you talked about. I'm just picking up things which you gotten. Jurisprudence is one of the topics which they teach, and I still teach them. I still believe they teach. They started it in 1970s, if I'm not wrong. In Japan, they teach law to every child. Now, what this means is you know your rights. You know what is coming on paper. You know like what you can fight for. You know what is required of you, your rights, your responsibilities. So this is taught to a child who knows, oh, I can't go there because this is not supposed to be. But this is what I have to contribute to because this is my responsibility, which is not today, like whether it's the legal system or whether it's the anything, whether it's a tenant agreement or whether it's
everything is incomprehensible, inaccessible.
Absolutely.
You'll need experts on it, pay tons of money to understand very basic terms and conditions. Yeah.
But this is what they had done almost like 40, 50 years ago, and which has been worked and reworked. Another very important thing which I would like to highlight and pick from what you just talked about is how many times have we reworked our educational system, whether it's the educational policy? 4 times, maybe max 5 times. I think Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, those, 4 or 5, Manmohan Singh, I think, and the one recently, NEP 20. So 4 or 5 times in a span of how many years? 60, 70 years for a nation of how many billions, So we need to really keep looking at, as a 5-year plan, we need to really look at, even if it means having a master plan, but having addendums in it. Today, decisions are made on the fly in minutes, if not in seconds, So whether it's the business scape, whether it's the employment scape, whether it's the skill scape, everything is changing so fast. How can we afford, or how can we have a system which has served the British Empire still being dictated onto us? So again, and this is like mass production, and I keep comparing it to the industrial revolution which took place then, and that's the same model which Henry Ford, which was used by Henry Ford in his industry, which is being translated into education today. So we have grade 1. You add some knowledge onto a child, pass on to a grade 2, add some more
assembly line product.
Yes, teachers are doing like what they feel best. They add those knowledge in whatever scenarios, in whatever circumstances, whether someone is talking and, putting. What I'm trying to say is there is a complete disconnect between, the child who is a living organism, if you could call him that or her that, and the person who is teaching and training. So, and it moves on to knowledge is being added. We are very good at storing, and this can be seen all across, whether it's rote learning, whether it's the examination, the way we conduct examination, even the word examination, not evaluation, examination. Yeah. So you examine like a bacteria, you examine the person, So examination is the word. So we keep passing this on from one stage to another, and at the end of it, you have a complete robotic, no idea, no creative, juices, and a person who's ready to go on to the next stage of education. Even worse. So we take away that creativity. You tear apart that creativity and absolve the organism there of that creativity, which is the most
important, essential thing.
Aspect, and this is what will determine our skill base tomorrow, which is relevant even today or even yesterday for that matter. So you in your process of making everything uniform, what you have taken away is that nature doesn't go straight. A plant or a tree doesn't go straight, and then every plant, every tree, every organism is unique.
That sort of assembly line system occurred, and assembly line model sort of sustained itself. There's a very popular song by a British band, I forget the name, I don't know if it was AC/DC or not. It was called Another Brick in the Wall, and of course they were the British, and they passed on their form of education to us. They talked about this problem in the video, and if you listen to the song Another Brick in the Wall, there's a kid who's scribbling something into his notepad, and it turns out that he's writing a poem where he's being taught maths along with other students, and the teacher gets after him and beats him up. and this song is playing in the background. All in all, we're just another brick in the wall. So they, despite having such high levels of education, are complaining about this problem 30, 40 years back when the song came out. We are still yet to realize this problem. I think we have not realized it as yet. Or maybe there is it in the conscience, but we're not taking action against it.
So yeah, I mean, and this is aptly put by you. In fact, when you talk about like the brick in the wall, so why are we all just bricks in the wall? Why are we like not more than blocks?
Just a brick, yeah.
Yes. So this is something, and this is not what will define our leadership. This is not what will define our nation's leadership. So if you really need to have more leaders, not managers, leaders, we need to have the creative juices flowing. We need to have curriculum which is curated for children, really having the child in mind, not conforming like to one way of thinking or learning, not conforming to a setting. There are so many things incorrect, in fact. I'll just try to stick to the flow again. And so when we talk about that, so the critical thinking aspect, the creative thinking aspect, if what if content or learning could be very unique to the child, and because every child is different.
Exactly.
Every child is unique. So why don't we have like, which is more, I'm not saying for every child, but this is what technology can do for you. This is what technology can really diversify learning, in the sense that, it can give you so many things. So why can't it be a escape, or why can't it be a environment for the child wherein the child is, uniquely treated? We're talking also about rote learning, how the educational system, how it started, or at least from the colonial era, like, because the fact that industrialization touched it or browsed it has a lot to how we are experiencing it today. So education as we feel and perceive it today has a lot to do with how it started, say about a few hundreds of years back, because before that there was another system altogether. So with this uniformity, conformity, rote learning, batch forming, and just doing things in a block process is so important, because that's what industries are all about.
Yeah.
And we were basically trained to be industrial workers, not to be free thinkers or philosophers or creative people. We should not, as a nation, be creating more memory disks. We need more processes. We need to go away from rote learning, really.
Yeah.
We really need to, because anything and everything, even what, the numbers, and any data that we talk about can all be, I mean, you ask Google and it would come up with it. Why do we need today you have everything stored in cloud. Any and everything that is there can be found on cloud. So why do we need more, and technology today is, levitating towards or going towards a point wherein we need to be more human, and how we'll be more human will decide as to, how well you are in your life.
So can you elaborate upon that a little more with an example?
Okay. Well, yes. So when we talk about processes today, when we talk about businesses today, when we talk about industries today, we don't want people who can keep accounts. There are programs which do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need people who can just jot down what you need. AI is already doing it. We need people who are problem solvers, who are critical thinkers, who can, move away, look at it, who can design, who can look away, like keep the problem away and, design solutions, who are creative, who are agile, because it's not like, things are changing like this. Industries are moving like this. Decisions have to be made like this. You cannot afford to just sit back and look at data. No, it doesn't work like that today. So that is the metal of people, the kind of human resource that we need in the world today, not India, in the world today. We need to be like you were asking about an example of how it is relevant today. So today we need bosses who understand that, the other person he or she is talking to is also a human being. Not just because when you talk about today, everything is about convergence, collaboration. You cannot have a single individual doing everything. You need to work together. That's what the way from here onwards is all about. Long gone are the days when we talk about the crab example, pushing one down, and those need to go away really, because that was long time ago. And if we really need to go ahead, that's where the world is now. And that will be the language which everyone will speak as we go ahead. So we need to work together. So it means collaboration. When we need to work together, it means that there will be people who will not agree with you, who would not even like you. But there'll be diversity in the team. There'll be different ideas in the team. There'll be different kinds of people, So the mental health of such people. So when we, when we talk about a car, the car is just not the steering wheel or the wheels or the engine or the exhaust or the seats for that matter. It's all of it put together. So when we talk about a company or a group or a team leader or a manager or a business CXO, now we are talking about people who need to carry people along together. We need to have people who will, pull them in a direction which they can then lead to. So in that, what needs to happen is you need to be empathetic. You need to be compassionate. You need to have compassion in you so that you understand where the person is. The person had a very bad day. The person, the very close relative had an accident, comes on board. We have a critical meeting. Nothing was done. Now, we are all human beings. Yeah, we need to look at such things. So in the roads ahead or in the years ahead, these are the values which will make or mar you as a team leader, as an organization, as a nation. So this we need to be mindful of carrying everyone together. In fact, and it is beautifully there in our culture. When we talk about everything, whether the whole world is our family. So when we talk about a family, it's not like an outsider. You don't, even for outsiders, we don't have that kind of a thing. We carry everyone together. So that needs to be there in an organization. There'll be good days. There'll be not so good days. But we need to carry our people, because those are the people who will take you in all those not so good days.
Yeah.
Working with people, learning from people. No person is perfect. In fact, I learn every single day, every minute. In fact, if I had the ability, I would do more. In fact, education is supposed to make a person humble. Education is supposed to make a person, carry and make the person blossom, bloom, So that is the idea of education, and not the other way around, where he or she's bogged down,
Bullied, intimidated, and
chained,
harassed.
So
Yes. Because I think that's another byproduct of our education system is being bullied by teachers also, or being bullied by fellow classmates, or when you get into the workforce, being bullied by a boss, or being bullied by most senior members of the team or managers. And then there's this constant intimidation that happens that leads to lack of self-awareness and more self-criticism that leads to self-deprecation. Your self-esteem gets hit hard, and that impacts your work. And then when it impacts your work, it impacts the morale of the team. So it's cyclical, right? In that sense, so for sure.
So it's just not like the words, the sentences, or the content which is taught in schools. It is also about how you bloom as a character. Because that's where children spend most of the time. That is the first step towards the social world as they know it. That is the place where they see all sorts of, that's the place where the deepest friendships are formed. That's the
For sure,
where
yeah.
the first. It's the first step, or it's the first window into how the world is. What's my place in this world? It's the place where letters transform into sentences, and sentences become thoughts. So if a teacher is able to do that part of saying that there is always a possibility, there is always anything that you passionately can dream of, you can always build. Those creators, are what our
The
nation
world
needs,
needs, yeah, for sure.
or even our world needs today, in fact.
Yeah. So then the question is that the next big question is the level of disparity between national level of education and international level of education.
Yeah, we talk about, no, the thing is also about the international level of education, like what we can learn from our neighboring countries.
Okay, so let's talk about what we can learn from our neighboring countries. If you can
Yes.
give us an idea.
Yes. So we have Singapore. We touched that briefly, and I wanted to talk about it because this is one segment which, since it's packed all around education, since it's enveloped all around education, this is something like which is going to benefit some of the listeners who are going to listen. So we have in Singapore, of course, like the G1, G2, G3 kind of thing which is coming up. Before we had the express mode of teaching and training, where like we were segmenting them into different groups. Now, even that, now they're going to change it next year. 2024 is when we're going to change it into another like subject level kind of training. As I say, like the value-based training is very important, and this is what is the change they should bring about. Like having values in their curriculum. So whether it's patriotism, we talked about this extensively. One important thing also, which I would like to highlight, is the teacher to child ratio. We have it in our schools, probably 1:25, 13 urban areas here. Rural, I don't know, maybe 1 to maybe 60 or 80.
In Mithibai, we had 1 to 100. Mithibai College.
It's getting better, I believe. The sad plight of education. So the student ratio is something we have seen. Agility, we talked about agility in business before, wherein like small agile groups can make so much impact. So that's the same kind of a thing which would work in education. Having a smaller teacher to child ratio, 1:15 is the ideal. 1:12 is the best. I know it's a far-fetched dream, but if we can do so much, that means that so many more teachers have to come into play.
Yeah.
When struggling like with basic amenities, this could be a far cry, but this is something which, if we could do, because the results are amazing. Research has proved again, time and again, that smaller groups, more closer groups, learning levels are much better.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is our focus on input based learning. We focus so much on inputs. When we and I've been invited. There was an industrialist like I visited, and he also has schools. So the top educators, they talked about how, like, we're doing this, we are doing that, we are doing this, we are having, robotics, we are doing STEM, we are doing this. We focus so much on the different aspects of what you put into the curriculum that we forget, like, what are the learning outcomes which are supposed to, what are the outcome
which is more important, which is ultimately
most important.
Yeah, which is the most important thing to come out.
So we are not able to define that a student who's attending maybe class 12 or class 12 in grade 2, what's he taking out of it? What is he supposed to take off, or the takeaway part of it is never defined.
It's
Or
also like the MBA degree, right? It's over marketed, massively capitalist, and the most overhyped, least useful degree, I feel, and most expensive for the middle classes around the world, because everyone seems to be getting at least one, and then other forms of its offshoots. But at least with the offshoots, you're getting into marketing, sales, accounting, specialized masters is different. But this generic master's in business administration degree has been a scam. I mean, to say the least, to put it unkindly, I think.
The problem is, again, we don't deal with case studies. We don't deal with what's required in the real world. These are all theoretical, we have books which are rolled out. We have resources which we have to go away from this aspect of, just looking at resources and that being there and it just coming out, the same rote learning coming out in different formats. Today in engineering, colleges, projects probably that anyone would have done are outsourced. Today everything is outsourced. We have a group which does these projects and gives it back to you, which you can present to the college and you get your grades. So what that means is that a doctor who is going to perform a surgery doesn't know how to hold a knife.
That's crazy. That's very scary.
You're giving engineers building bridges. They don't have a fair idea of today the output of so-called skilled, whether it's from a carpenter, a plumber to an engineer or an architect, the human resource which is coming out of our schools, and this is again very important. The quality of our human resource is absolutely pathetic.
If you had to make it tangible, I think that is the most important thing too, right? Like, how do we make the outcome be felt tangibly, rather than intellectualizing or using flowery language to say that these are the outcomes. But unless it's tangible, unless there is a metric or quantifiable metric to gauge it, then how do you know the end result?
Also like get it more project based. Get it more project based, wherein see the need of the hour is working together. Projects, you have a start, you have a finish, you have a timeline. You have people who are required to work together. So whether you like it or not, you have to work together with them. You also have some measurables. So why not have even our projects, even the educational programs that we have run, even for the youngest of the lot, we have it in a model wherein you can see outcomes really. So whether it's communication, whether it is any of the metrics that we talk about. So those are some of the things. So the skilled workers, so the people who are coming out of our universities, the quality of human resource is another concern that, I would like to highlight, or I wanted to highlight in this segment. We talked about Japan having jurisprudence or law, as
part of their curriculum.
Part of the, programs. We also have it doing sociology, logos of, the social aspects of how to relate with. These are the things which are not there in our educational system. One is research. We need more researchers. We need people who will dig more, who will go into the finer aspects of learning. First of all, I started with the early education system. We don't teach how to learn. We don't teach how to learn. We don't teach how to think. We don't teach how to work.
Right.
We don't teach how to use resources, which includes money.
Yeah.
So we never, and these things don't come with a manual. Oh, step one, press here. Step two, no, they don't. And these are things which we start using as early as 4, 5, 6 years, in fact.
Sure.
How do we work together? How to communicate? So this is how to, so these are things which are so essential that we start early, not this one said to this one on 26th July 1965, what did this person tell this person? I don't even remember, to be honest.
No, that and the fact that the practicality of it all, right? Like today when we
Absolutely.
get into the workforce. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that and say that what's the practicality of it? Ultimately, what's the use of today? We've never been given we've never been given financial education. Growing up, we could have even been
theta, plus sine square theta is equal to 1. Where do we use it? What are we doing with it? How math? There are many aspects of math. What are we doing? Not like Rahul had some part,
16 apples and
four. Come on,
move on through them. Yeah.
And the most important aspect is after teaching the basics of math, then we go to abstract, differentiation, So it's pathetic, like really, in the sense like, how can we miss the application part? Okay, you teach abstractness, the longevity of let's say math or economics or whether it's statistics, but also have the application part of it, which is a key part of it. Don't miss on those parts, So I was talking about like who said to who, like history, you can use the history of math. What is the history of math in our country? When was it discovered? We talked about Pythagoras, the so-called Pythagoras theorem, so many years before Pythagoras. We talk about metrics so many years before, like the meter or the feet came into being. Why don't we talk about that? There are so many things.
I was also going to say sociology. You mentioned, we talked about history. Why don't we get taught political science in our courses? That would have been more useful to us today to understand our own country's problems. I think that today we need experts to tell us, like J. Sai Deepak, who's a very renowned YouTube celebrity now, who's also a lawyer at the Supreme Court, and he's a historian. And then there are multiple other people that give discourses on public platforms. But I feel like that should have been a training that we should have had going through school. Basic law, I feel, should be taught to everyone, like you said. Basic political science knowledge, basic financial education that is applicable to the real world. So that when you step into the real world, you start working professionally, you start getting an income. What do you do with your money? Where do you invest? What are mutual funds? What are stocks? What are brokers? And
absolutely,
that is what is the need of the hour. Instead of learning how to make a flow chart or learning how to what was that thing in accounting we were taught in school? Balance sheet or final accounts.
Balancing.
We were just shown how to create a balance sheet or a final account, but I mean, its application again was like, where was that?
Yeah. So those are kind of things which I wanted to talk about. I think I wanted to talk more, but I think I'll stop myself.
No, I think we've managed to do a little more than just scratch the surface. We have been able to dig deep into a lot of problematic areas in our forms of education in India, and discussed about Asian forms of education in more developed sort of education societies. So great learning for me personally, and I'm sure that the listeners of this episode are also going to benefit a lot from all the knowledge you shared. So thank you so much. But of course, a lot more still needs to be discussed, for which we would like to have you back. We need to talk about tuitions. I think would be a separate topic or a separate podcast, and the scam of tuitions happening in India and unfolding, where millions and millions of people are being robbed of their dreams and being sold fake dreams. And I think that there's a massive scam worth billions, and not millions, billions of dollars being made at the hands of the so-called educators or providers of education. But and then of course we need to talk about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and a wealth of other topics. So thank you again, Dr. Prabhakar. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast as well.
I was so overjoyed. No, it's really. I hope that I can contribute to some building blocks somewhere, and our listeners will be able to derive some value out of it, and even translate it to learnings in school, wherever in the world.
I'm sure they will. Thank you again. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.